Somebody said that the job of the second half of life is unlearning what you learned during the first half of life. Like a lot of people my age, I had parents who came of age in the Great Depression. Neither of them grew up in affluence by any standard. They finished high school together in 1931, 2 years into the Great Depression. But they were lucky. Both of them were the first members of their families to graduate from high school, and that was a huge accomplishment in a rural South Carolina town in 1931. I found out many years after I was grown that something in each of their lives, unforeseen events, robbed them of their dreams of higher education. My mother's ambition to become a nurse, and my dad's hopes to attend the U.S. Naval Academy. They never pushed their 3 sons, myself and my 2 brothers, into any vocation. But they, like everybody else in their society, believed ardently in doing your best, achieving what you could. In the world in which I grew up, there was a ladder of success, and the way up was to get on that ladder and to climb it. I'm not sure that my brothers had a case of perfectionism quite to the extent that I had, but I was from an early age out to be the best little boy in the world. If one of my teachers taught me what it meant to be patriotic, I was ready to sign on. If my music teacher was pleased with how I played a piece, she'd put a gold star in my book. And my goal was to go to every music lesson and have a gold star, if not more than one, on every piece that I played. If ministers and Sunday school teachers challenged me to live a godly life, I was first in line, ready to go for it. When I joined the Boy Scouts, I took the Scout Law seriously, and I intended to keep it. I tell you all this not to impress you, but because, chances are, you weren't so different from me. Even if you were, like one of my brothers, a nonconformist, still you realized that the rewards came to those who followed the rules and followed them well. The way up and up and up lasted well into my 40s. I think I can honestly say that I simply didn't know how to look at life any differently. Even when I began to learn some important lessons in spiritual life, practices that aren't about achieving, still, I wanted to master those practices. I wanted to become a good meditator, if that's what it was about. The process was the same, only the goal had shifted. Then, in my 50th year, I made some decisions that ultimately led to the unraveling of my perfectionistic world. I stepped off the ladder, stopped climbing, stopped wanting to get better and better. And for several years, I didn't know what to do or how to do it. I didn't know where to go or how to get there. Slowly, I learned that the journey was really not about going up, but indeed about the way of coming down. Instead of getting higher and higher, I found that I yearned to be more and more down to earth, maybe even a bit subterranean. Instead of lofty ideals, I began to learn that the way for me was to be flatly real. Not that I could do flatly real particularly well then or even now, but I began to understand that being real meant not being perfect, but being whole. And wholeness involves not so much a climb as it does stepping off the ladder and looking around and looking inward I began to get acquainted with that host of interior characters that I, like everybody else, carries around inside in the shadowlands of my soul. Now, the interesting thing is that it took the better part of a decade, but slowly I began to discover that the way down leads straight into a kind of death, maybe even more than one. Parts of me had to die so that other parts of me could shoot up and come to life. You know, the truth is revealed when you get to that point. I feared what would happen if I stopped striving to be this or that, or to get to certain rungs on that old ladder. And I found that when I began paying attention to the desires of my soul, the movements of my nature, the things in my heart, I was not losing my life, but finding it. The way down, 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 off the ladder, out of the upward movement, paradoxically led to finding another way up. Looked at in the framework of the first half of my life, it made no sense, and it still doesn't make any sense. But now I know that the way of descent is not the path to oblivion. It is the road to real life. What I've come to see in the last decade is that my story is not even close to being unique. It is truly one of thousands of examples of what the universe itself keeps telling us. Over and over, we see it in nature in the change of seasons. We see it in the complementary processes of geology, of construction and destruction. The eternal flux of those processes are really about going down, coming up, going down, and coming up. You cannot have one without the other. We find it in human behavior. Spend your life trying to get somewhere higher and higher, and you find out ultimately that the goal that you may reach was not what it was cracked up to be. A close friend of mine told me recently about a fellow that she'd been in high school with. I remembered him well. Do you know how fabulously rich he is now? He has a private plane, untold millions of dollars. He can do anything he wants. He can go anywhere he wants. And you know what? He's lonely. None of his old friends are comfortable being with him. He doesn't have anybody he can trust. Very few people he can be honest with. I wouldn't imagine that this story is necessarily a typical story, or that it's that guy's whole story. But I do know that it's a story shared by many, particularly by many of us men who've been groomed to get on a ladder to success and to climb it until finally we reach the promised land. But the wisdom traditions of the world keep telling us over and over that it is precisely in going down that we find ourselves uplifted. It's precisely in uniting with the down and out that we find ourselves enriched. It's by going down that our spirits are free to ascend to heights of joy indescribable. It really doesn't much matter whether you believe it or not. I'm not so sure that even if I'd understood all this when I was doing a pretty good job of climbing my ladders, and there were more than one, I could have suddenly decided to live differently. When I did so decide, it was scary, painful, costly. But if a sudden loss, an unexpected grief, a new possibility, a fresh relationship, or some other twist in your life kicks you off the path up and lands you on your butt in the dirt, it might just be that it's not the finger of fate giving you the finger, but the mysterious nature of the real offering you the chance to discover the truth. The way down is the way up. Thanks for listening. I love you guys, and I appreciate you, and I enjoy talking with you, and we'll look forward to doing so again next month. Join me. Thank you.